Jephthah is remembered for the victory, but the most important part of his story starts with a mistake. Before any battle, before any leadership, before anyone trusted him. That's where it actually begins, because at this point, Jephthah isn't a hero. He's the son no one wanted, rejected, pushed out of his own home, removed from the place he was supposed to belong. So he grows up outside everything. No structure, no approval, no real place to return to. Which is exactly why, years later, when things start going wrong, they come back for him. Not because they change their minds, because now they need someone who knows how to deal with chaos. And Jephthah fits that role perfectly. So they bring him back, not as a first choice, as the only one left. And he accepts. Of course he does, because this isn't just about the war. It's about finally proving something, that he was never the problem, that sending him away didn't fix anything, that he should have been there all along. And that kind of pressure usually doesn't lead to calm decisions, it leads to fast ones. So before the battle even starts, he makes a vow. Not a small one, not a careful one, a dramatic, all-in kind of promise. If I win this, whatever comes out of my house when I return, I'll sacrifice it. No clarification, no limit, no pause to rethink. Great idea. Just whatever comes out. Which in that moment probably sounds powerful, decisive, maybe even spiritual. Because that's how pressure works. It convinces you that extreme decisions mean strong faith, like trying to lock in the outcome by saying something you can't take back. It's like finally getting the opportunity you've been waiting for and promising more than you can actually deliver just to secure it. Except here, there's no adjustment later, no second version of the deal. No, let me rephrase that. Just one sentence. Sitting there. And right now it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels distant, like something future Jephthah will deal with. Eventually. At some point. Not now. And this is where it starts going wrong. Because the problem didn't start when something came out of the house. It started here, with a sentence that sounded strong and was already a mistake. And at this point, he still thinks the battle is the hardest part. Jephthah is fighting a war, but that's not really the problem anymore. Because by now the pressure isn't coming from the enemy, it's coming from expectation. He's not just leading, he's proving. Proving he deserved to come back, proving they were wrong to push him out, proving this whole decision works. And that kind of pressure doesn't slow people down, it speeds them up. Everything becomes more urgent, more intense, less thought through. Jephthah doesn't just want to win, he wants to remove all doubt, fast. So he leads like someone who can't afford hesitation. Every move matters, every moment counts, because if this fails, it confirms everything they said about him. And that's not an option. So the battle begins, and surprisingly, it works. The strategy holds, the enemy weakens, momentum shifts, and just like that, Jephthah wins. Clean, decisive, exactly what they needed, which should settle everything. It should end the tension, it should prove his point, and for a moment, it does. The rejected son returns, leads the fight, delivers the result. Perfect story, except something doesn't move forward with the rest of it, because the battle ends. But the vow doesn't. It just stays there, quiet, unquestioned, untouched. Like it belongs to a different story, which would be convenient, but not how this works, because no one asks about it, no one brings it up, and Jephthah doesn't either, not because it doesn't matter, because right now, it doesn't feel urgent. It feels like something for later, after the return, after the celebration, after everything settles down, and this is usually where people relax, after the pressure drops, after the result is secured. That moment where you think, okay, that worked. And that's exactly where mistakes hide best. Not when things are going wrong, when everything looks like it worked. It's like finishing something important and ignoring the one detail you said you'd deal with later. You know it's there. You just don't feel like dealing with it yet, which again, great strategy, because now the focus shifts from what it cost to win to the fact that they won, and nobody stops to look back. Nobody checks the fine print. Nobody asks what he actually said. And that silence, that's where the problem grows, because the war is over. But whatever he promised isn't. And he still hasn't dealt with it. And this is where things start getting complicated. He promised to sacrifice whatever came out of his house, and the door opened. The battle is over, the pressure is gone, the result is in. He won. So he goes home. No urgency now, no tension, no reason to expect anything unusual, just return. And then the door opens, and someone runs out to meet him, celebrating, excited, proud. It's his daughter. She's smiling, moving fast, completely unaware, and Jephthah understands immediately. No pause, no confusion, no need to think it through. He knows, because no one else heard the vow. No one else is carrying what he said. So from the outside, this looks like the perfect ending. Victory, family, relief, everything in place, exactly how it's supposed to go. Except it isn't. Because the problem doesn't arrive slowly. It doesn't give warnings, it doesn't build up over time, it arrives complete, all at once. There's no time to adjust, no time to reinterpret. No, that's not what I meant. Just one moment, where everything connects. And he realizes the win and the consequence are the same moment. It's like fixing something under pressure and realizing instantly that the fix made everything worse, not later, right there. And there's nothing to revise, nothing to walk back, because he said it, clearly, out loud, with no conditions, which, in hindsight, great plan, because now the story shifts from the battle to the promise, from what he fought to what he said, and no one else reacts. Not yet. They're still celebrating, still seeing victory, still inside the version of the story that makes sense, but he's not, because he already knows where this is going, and this is where the story gets uncomfortable, because technically, he got exactly what he asked for. Victory. Clear. Complete. Undeniable. Just not the part that comes after. Victory confirmed. Timing. Not ideal. And now there's only one question left. What does he do with what he said? Because ignoring it won't work. And explaining it won't fix it. And undoing it isn't really an option anymore. And this is where everything changes. The war is over, but his decision isn't. There's no battlefield now, no enemy, no movement. Just one thing left. What he said. And now, that's the problem. Because this wasn't required, it wasn't commanded, it wasn't even necessary. He added it, on his own, under pressure, and now it exists. Which means now, he has to deal with it. And then, his daughter speaks, not resisting, not arguing, accepting, calm, steady, and somehow that makes it worse, because now there's no conflict to hide behind, no resistance, no interruption, just quiet agreement, which removes the last excuse he could have had. It's like making a decision you shouldn't have made, and everything goes through anyway, no warning, no friction, just consequences. And at this point, turning back would mean admitting something, that it was wrong, that it never made sense, that everything he said under pressure shouldn't have been said at all. And that's where it locks, because now it's not about the promise anymore, it's about pride. It's like continuing a bad decision just because you've already gone too far to stop. Which obviously, great idea. Because now the situation shifts. This isn't about faith, it's about commitment. Not to God, but to his own words. And this is where things stop making sense, because God never asked for this, never required it, never suggested it, but Jephthah treats it like it came from him, as if following through makes it right, as if keeping the promise justifies the damage, which creates a strange logic, where the problem isn't questioned, only completed, and now everything is locked. The decision, the outcome, all of it moving forward, just because he said it once. And at this point, there's no battle left, only a choice he refuses to release. And the worst part, this still isn't the part people struggle with most. Jephthah wasn't remembered for the war, but for the decision he made before it. Because the battle, that part worked. He showed up. He led. He won. Clear result. But that's not what stayed. What stayed was everything that came attached to it. Because this story doesn't move in a straight line. It builds. Rejection turns into pressure. Pressure turns into urgency. Urgency turns into a promise. And the promise doesn't disappear after the victory. It waits, quietly, until the moment it has to be fulfilled. And that's the part people don't usually focus on, because it's easier to talk about the win, the comeback, the leadership, the visible part, not the part that came from insecurity, from needing to prove something fast, from trying to secure an outcome instead of trusting the process. Because the real problem wasn't the battle, it was the need to guarantee it, at any cost. And that changes everything, because once you try to control the outcome like that, you start adding things that were never required. Extra pressure, extra promises, extra weight, none of it necessary, all of it real. And once it's said, it doesn't just go away, it follows. Through the win, through the silence, through the moment where everything should have been over, but isn't. Because winning solved the moment. It didn't undo the decision, it just moved it forward. And now the story isn't about what he achieved, it's about what he created trying to achieve it, which is a very different kind of outcome, and a much harder one to deal with, because this isn't failure in the obvious sense. He didn't lose, he didn't collapse, he didn't walk away, he succeeded, and still ended up with something he couldn't fix, which is usually where things get uncomfortable, because it breaks the assumption that if you win, everything else falls into place. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the win locks in the consequence, and that's the part nobody teaches, that not every problem comes from losing. Some come from what you were willing to do to avoid it, and that stays longer. Because the worst vow in the story wasn't the sacrifice, it was believing it was necessary in the first place.